Welcome to the Strategy Investment Podcast with Brett Warner. Brett is a successful entrepreneur and investor, and he and his team have sold over $1 billion in real estate. That's exactly what the show is about: real estate, investing, and family finance. Hey, my name is Jason. I'm your co-host. I'm asking all of your questions here, learning with you. And hey, whether you're listening on the podcast or watching online, we're glad that you're here. And today, we are talking about common mistakes in real estate. I'm super excited actually about this episode. And Brett, honestly, you were talking about one of the, at least, frustrations that you had this today, even coming into this episode. There are lots of things out there that can be challenges and trials. Tell us about the one to at least today. I think it had to do with a tenant, didn't it?
Yes, it did. It did. Tenants. Tenants are fun. As tenants say, landlords are fun. So for me, today it was just one of those days. You know, you sign a contract with somebody, you have a complete agreement, and this year's a little different with some of the new laws. We're in a interesting year going into the new year.
These are the challenges. When you
let them into the place because they needed a place to live.
Right.
They didn't have another option.
And I have shared with you, I've had a couple of investment properties along the way. I would say the biggest challenge has been that relationship, the tenant-landlord relationship and the property. And I think it comes along with today's topic, which is common mistakes in real estate. Because every time we face one of those challenges, I think there's a learning there every time that we see one of those challenges. But I know this. You have been in real estate for over 20 years.
Yes.
And the first question that I want to ask you is this: what is one thing that you wish that you had done differently? If you could go back in time, swing a magic wand and go, I'm going to put myself right here at this moment in wherever that is in your career and go, I'm going to do this differently. What would that be?
Okay, so I try not to look back too much like that because often I see them as learning lessons. I don't really regret a whole lot, but I learned from them. I don't like pain. And so I guess what I would say is probably the biggest painful thing there's been some great tenants. There's been some that have great success stories. So I don't want to throw those out, but many have been, I had hope that somebody would get on their feet and then they make a bunch more bad decisions. And I should have known at 39 if they're making bad decisions and nobody's helping them, that probably there's a reason for that. And I think at 42, they're going to come up with bright lights and discover. And sometimes it happens, but often if you've made bad decisions up to about 45, it's hard to change that course. So my biggest thing I don't know if I'd change it because I told you I'd learn and I really like what I've learned in life, but it might be buy parking lots and storage units.
Okay.
Why? Because parking lots, why? I don't have water. I don't have sewer. I can even leave the bugs on the property, right? I mean, just park your car there, pay me my $60 or $150 a month, and you go to work, and I don't have to provide you nothing but a parking space. So there'd be like a lot of less problems there. Now, finding a parking lot can be more difficult. That can legally have people that want to park there,
right?
And then can park there every week that need that neighborhood. So usually the cities will make rules to say not too many parking lots because they don't want a bunch of parking lots. Or the storage is nice because there's less people again. But once again, you have people renting, they're just not living there. So you're under different rules. And so essentially when you're renting a tenant, there's a landlord act. And that landlord act protects those tenants somewhat that I have to.
Wow.
And I'm totally willing to work.
So, Brett, I did not see this coming. I'll be honest. I've known you for a while. I did not see that answer coming. To make a shift. And ultimately what you're talking about is strategy and going like, hey, actually, I would have looked out for more parking lots and more storage units than I would have. Yeah. But that's so interesting. And the other thing that I heard you say is with those storage units, I know there's a couple of famous, I'm going to look to our producer, there's a couple of famous TV shows, aren't there, with the storage units?
Oh, Storage Wars.
Storage Wars. That's what I was trying to think of, where, it's like, hey, if a tenant isn't paying, it's not even an eviction. It's like, I'm going to sell your stuff and we're going to move on.
Correct. 30 days, 65 days, and you got it.
Little easier solution there. Little easier solution there. Well, that's fantastic. So that is really interesting.
But remember what I said. I've learned so much, and I do get so much back from the relationships that are good relationships.
Sure.
And that doesn't mean I always get what I want or a fully I mean, I've let people go that haven't paid their rent, but they had good principles with me.
Sure.
They told me that they lost their job. They told me they weren't going to be able to make it. They told me that they'd be out on the 15th. They told me they were going to try to clean the place. They still left the top of the fridge a mess. They didn't clean the top of the fridge off. The underside of the stove was a mess. But I saw somebody with good principles. And so it's when you say, I'm shutting down, I'm not talking to you. And then that's when I have to go, okay, I got to be an authority here. I can't just sit here and allow you to get away with this. It makes me a very weak man. It would be, you could call it patience, but there's a contract, and that contract says you pay so much money, and I provide you water, a roof, a door, and I give up certain rights when you pay me that money. When you don't pay me that money, you shouldn't get those rights anymore. At least to that point. Right. And where respect comes is they come in and they say, hey, this is my plan. I'm sorry I lost my job. Life stinks. And a good landlord says, hey, don't worry about the last month's rent. I'll take a look at that. Let me try to work with you, get you on your feet. Because if you stay here, you're just going to cost money for all of us. So if you got somebody, let's get you out of here where you don't owe anything. You can move back into the basement at a friend's or mom's, and you can get back on your feet. But some people choose not to even approach, and that's irresponsible to me. It's like, why would you not tell your landlord that you lost your job and you're not going to be paying when you'd be out? Or how you're going to do it. I'm going to go down to this subsidy. I mean, right now, I'm amazed that nobody can make rent. And this is when you just say it's lack of responsibility, because every city's giving out money for free rent right now. So if somebody's not paying you rent, it means they have no responsibility and they don't care about what they've signed. And I'm telling you, I have them sign these things, and literally it's a bullet point, because it's like, go to bed at, lights out at 11. Why? Because it's a living home.
Well,
just going back to that.
Yeah, and here's the thing, because I want to point this out to our listeners as well, because, having known you for, years now, I know that, and I'll just really, I want to make this clear to our listeners, because you are one of the most generous people that I've probably ever known. So when you talk about these properties, you're giving opportunities to people that are lower than the average rent, than the going rent. Correct. Right now.
Yes.
And so I think when you hear, like, as a listener, as you hear some of this frustration, I think some of it comes because your heart really is to give an opportunity to people that may not have opportunities elsewhere.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, these people didn't have other options. And I came along and I said, hey, you need a place to live. I mean, I've taken people out underneath, freeway underpasses. I've met people behind the dumpsters, and for some reason, I would say the good Lord above probably moved on my heart, because it wouldn't have been me. And so I decided, hey, maybe I can help you. Because if I go back to my rewind where you hear my frustrations, you would see that I would have given up on this. But I don't, because the ability to help somebody.
Right, the generosity piece.
The reward is more than interest in a bank account.
Right.
So the interest in a bank account gives you the time, or if they don't pay you, then you can cover it. right? I mean, that's important.
Yes,
so.
yes. Yeah, exactly. No, that's great. I'm glad to, I have pointed out, I think, some of those challenges, and not that necessarily those are mistakes, because I think that we're hearing the generosity of your heart. But since today we are talking about mistakes, one of the next questions that we got quite often was, have you ever had a real estate deal go bad? If you look back and there's a deal in your head that you're like, wow, that one I don't want to repeat. And what was the learning there?
Okay, so a real estate gone bad. I mean, I've had personal ones that gone back, and I my office represents quite a few deals. So we had, there's going to be bad deals. I mean, I'd like to call it transaction rather than a deal, but sometimes we'll refer to them as deals. And so, I mean, it's just.
Is there one that comes to mind?
Well, there's so
I
many.
realize. There really are. Well, because at the outset of the show, we said, look, you and your team have sold over $1 billion in real estate. That's a lot of transactions, so to speak. All right. So, but I think for the purpose of today, we're like, okay, common mistakes. If there was a mistake that was made in one of the transactions that you had that you could put your finger on and go, yeah, that was a mistake back there, and I learned it the hard way, and this is what I learned. From there forward, I had an extra, there was an extra piece of paper that we needed to sign. There was an extra.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, for me, probably not having somebody in between me, talking to, I'll just go personal rather than, I can think transactions that happen in my office and we pick the wrong buyer that takes forever and 52 extensions later, you may close or you're not. But I'll go to the, where I might have made a mistake. I think I had it there for a second, and then I got to bring it back.
Yeah, I think the key here, the heart of the question, from where it came from, was really about not so much a deal that went bad, but really the key learning. Really, because we know, that mistakes are going to get made. Mm-hmm. Early on, mistakes are going to get made. You're going to make mistakes early on, and not just early on, but as you go.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that this question is trying to get at is, what was one of those things where I walked away and I was going to do this different every time?
Okay, yeah, there we go. I got it. I think for me, it was not putting somebody in between me and the buyer. Okay, so I was in the process of selling a house, and I'm a man of my word. I guess if you're not a man of word, it doesn't really matter. You would have just done what you darn well want. But generally, if I say I'm going to do something, it's like, a handshake, an old 1950s handshake, look in the eyes, and it's going to be done. And what I did was I thought to myself, if I talk to these people, I can make a deal here. And I think I was on the market for like a week. And I said, okay, let's go ahead and do this. And I literally said, yes, I'll take your offer. Okay. And I think that offer, I guess the price doesn't really matter. But let's just say, I was listed at $200,000, and let's say the offer came in at $185,000. And I said, you get that to me by 9 o'clock. You get that. Actually, I said, you give me that offer, and I'll take it. All right. And so hung up the phone, and literally an hour later, somebody calls up and says, hey, got a full price offer. Come at $200,000. And I'm like, ugh. And so I call up to the broker, and I say, hey, when's that offer coming in? She's like, kind of like, well, I'm gonna get it. I said, hey, you have till 9 a.m. tomorrow morning to have me an offer for $185, or that's off the table. And the reason why, because I had to give them time to get me that offer. I didn't want it to be extended forever. I did say I'd take it. Now, most people say, well, you didn't put it in writing, because if it's not in writing, and it's not enforceable, it's not enforceable at all. If it's not in writing, it's not enforceable. But we have our bond, we have our word. And so I had to deal with this dilemma. I had to think about it, like, my golly. So it cost me $15,000 to pick up the phone and say, sure, I'll take that offer. Because I have character, I wanted to hold my word with them. They still got that offer to me by 8 in the morning. So from that point on, I always have somebody in between me and my own sales. So I will never represent myself in my own sale. Now, I am representing. They say I'm the worst quarterback ever because, I'm like, okay, do this and talk about this.
Right.
Okay. Oh, what do I do? I said, did you tell them this? Did you tell them that? And I'm like the doctor diagnosing the heart. And so I'm probably a horrible. I try to step back and I admit to them that I know that I'm playing, quarterback on their questions and what answers they get. But I really always represent somebody so I don't cost myself $15,000 again.
Okay, so really what you're saying is always just try and have someone in between you and that other person. I mean, okay, so let's expand on that for a second. Who should that someone else be? Is it an agent? Is it just an agent from your office?
I would say certainly it should be a licensed broker. But if you have somebody that's not a licensed broker that understands real estate, and you can talk to them and they can talk to somebody for you, well, this way you can bounce off. You can think about it. That person could be your messenger. Bring back that message. Where if I told my broker, let's say I hired a broker in that situation, and I said, hey, I'll take the 185. Let them know I'll take the 185. Well, if I turn around on my broker, that's a little different. Say, wait, we got an offer. You mean an hour later you got 200? Oh, you told them. Well, that's okay. You're the broker.
Right.
Now, if it's your best friend, you might want to say, I got to hold my word. But if it is a broker that you're hiring, that insulates you, because their job is to be presenting you all offers. Where when I was talking to that one person, I was just talking to them. And one thing you'll know, any good buyer that's trying to come in on a deal, they want to get you focused on them and focused off of everyone else. It's one of the things, the techniques they teach you. Say, get their eyes off of everyone else and get them focused on you, and then you start to negotiate. And so this was a different situation, but
right.
Get the focus, then we can take it down from there.
Got it. Okay, so Brett, how many brokers do you have in your office right now?
I have 15 maybe.
15, let's just say 15 brokers. Okay, so what would you say is the most common mistake of those brokers in your office? What would you say is the thing that you go, I'm looking for this because I see it, it's common? You're going, I'm always checking this thing because it happens that often.
Well, there's things I do because the state requires them, so I always check, right? So earnest money deposit within a certain time by who and who's touched, or it's the receipts, so we're tracking the money. So that's done because you don't want to forget it. It could be something that
you're legally
state,
obligated
yeah,
to
your
do.
state
Right.
could. I could say Olympia for our state, but your state enforcement bureau, your business license givers, they want you to. They're the ones that are going to enforce that stuff.
Right. So it's those little details. So what I hear you saying is it's those little details. It's like making sure the T's are crossed, the I's are dotted, that we've done everything that we need to contractually cover.
Well, and to hit that, it's it's a paper. The paperwork's important, and it's always very important to make sure you get all initials and all these things. Have a binding contract. So I could spend an hour, 3 or 4 hours just talking about what is a binding contract. But let's just say we got all the initials there. We got all the. What's really important? What's really important? One, your broker communicates well. The broker sends out a list of things that are going to happen in a certain timeline and when they're going to happen and what you're supposed to do in that thing. And then probably the most critical, I got to say, to be able to fill out you'd think all brokers knew how to fill out a contract, but they leave blanks. They miss initials. And so my brokers, I'm teaching them to always edit. And I even have a broker that oversees everything just to kind of edit the contracts to make sure we have a binding contract. That way I don't get my client in a contract that then they can get out of the contract, the other person get out of the contract, and when they have money invested. But let me tell you what the most important thing is. If the person is adequate in their ability to write up a contract and find you a property today, they don't even need to find you a property because you can find it on yourself by looking online. And then you say, hey, I found a property. Really what's important is they care about you. They really care about you. They really have your best interest. It's not about the close. One thing I find often in brokers is their whole job is to close. I hired somebody, gotta close. And it's like, wait a second here. This is the biggest purchase of their life. Walk with them. And it's not going to take them long, I promise, especially in a market like this year where there's not a lot of inventory. They learn on the third one to go, but they'll learn. But I'm telling you, so many brokers, when they get the offer in hand, when they get everything's, let's close. And it's like, well, no, we got to do our due diligence before we close. And I'm telling you, not just to the broker, but to the buyer that's listening right here, right now, your job is to make sure that you do your due diligence. As I think I said in an episode before, go under the house, go up into the attic, make sure that you've got your taxes, make sure there's no crazy easement going through the property. If you have an easement, make sure you have a maintenance agreement to that easement. So there's stuff, the title company, there's all these, and the broker should be able to point you each way. The job of the broker is to point. Okay, that's title. Boom, that's the city. Boom, that's call a contractor. Boom, oh, that's a surveyor. Boom, and it's constantly, they're telling you the things to do, but they're not the professional that does a survey. They show you the survey who is supposed to do that.
This is such a, it hits home for me. Well, the point that you're making actually really hits home for me because I was put in a situation where I actually had to fire a broker at one point, and that is exactly why my wife and I made the decision to go with someone else. Is because I felt she just wanted to close. There were things popping up that I was like, there's questions about the septic system, and it just doesn't seem right, and it was just like, don't worry about that. Here you go, just sign here. And we ultimately decided to go with someone else because we were like, no, I felt like, just like you said, that honestly she didn't truly really care about that. And it was. And here's the other thing, Brett. The only reason that I really knew to make that decision was because it was really our second home. Okay. It was the second time that we had gone through a primary home purchase for ourselves. And that's where I feel for first-time home buyers, because when it's all so new to you, that pressure can be a lot.
Yeah, you don't even know what to expect, right? You're just kind of getting there going, is this your job? I don't know. It's kind of like you can't tell a doctor or a foot doctor how to work on your foot. So this guy's coming in there and he's telling you this stuff. And I'm telling you, I can't tell you how many times I sit down with my managing broker. I'm the designated broker. I have a managing broker. And then we have a lot of smart brokers. But I'm amazed how many times I'm like, note to self, never hire them.
Right.
I'm amazed by the things that they'll do or leave out or things. And I'm not saying there's good brokers out there, but really, in the end of the day, it's probably about 30 to 40% of them.
Right. Yeah,
out of the
geez.
100%.
Wow,
and that's why you'll see these washouts that happen and stuff. And you'll see these things. I mean, they can all be good, but it's really a relational business, and then having relationships. So it's not just me. If I was going to sell you a house, it's not just me having a relationship with you. It's really important I have a relationship with a roofer. I have a relationship with a couple of inspectors. I have a relationship with the city. I have a relationship, with even sometimes the mayors. It's just, your broker should know everything in that town and have a lead to almost everything. If not, they know who to call to get one that's a trusted source.
Okay, that is a perfect lead into our next question.
You'd think we scripted stuff, but I don't even know
honestly,
my questions.
I know.
I don't want to come here. I don't even know.
We're just throwing these out. I'm actually, because I look down. You see me look down from time to time. I look down. That is the perfect transition, because the next question that we had was, what are 2 tips for those getting started as a broker? And it sounds like that might be one of them. Get to know your resources locally so that you can provide the best service to the people that are relying on you for that information. So, but that's just me taking that point and turning it around. But so how would you answer that? Two tips for somebody that are getting started as a broker or an investor.
2 tips. It's going to be really simple.
Yeah.
And you're going to hear me come back to this over and over, which really I think life is essential about. And you'll hear me complain about them sometimes, but I understand it's what life's about. Do you like people? If you don't like people, don't get in real estate. More importantly, ask some people around you. Go through this. Do people like you? If people don't like you, you're probably not going to do very good. If you want them just to come and kind of show up, if you want to call and do cold calls and do that, that'll probably work. But when you go there, you're probably not going to enjoy yourself because you're not there helping the person. You're there selling. You're trying to get the next thing. And I never sold anything. I just bought a duplex. The next thing I knew, somebody saying, "Can you sell me one?" I'm like, "No, go to the guys down the street. I got to buy my own duplex." And then they kept coming back, and I realized I could help them. But at that time I was like, "Well, I don't want to be a broker. I just want to buy some real estate." And then I realized by a couple guys that were very encouraging, or let's just say didn't give up, I ended up helping them out, and then the sales started coming and those things started happening, and here I am. So I really wasn't naturally a salesman. So you'll see I didn't take the sales courses, and you're going to hear that through this podcast. This is not a sales podcast. If you want to learn how to sell, this is not going to probably where you're going to learn it. I will give you probably some essential tools that will make a difference in your life. If you do, you'll never have to cold call again in your life. But if you don't learn them, it's really just sales. So, and that's why I always say it's important that you might have some savings on the side when you get in it, because you don't want a broker. I tell people you don't want a broker that's not going to be able to feed his family next month, or her. And the reason why that is because that means they got to sell your property this week to eat next month. So, also another good thing I think on a broker real quick is, if you're going to get into investment properties, I always say, ask this question. When you're, I got this broker. And I'm like, did you ask them, do they own it? I think you're going to hear me say this. Do they own investment real estate? No, but they're going to sell me some. Oh, really? So that person's going to sell you real estate.
They're going to experiment on you.
They're going to learn. Well, they know what they're doing. I'm like, oh, good for you. Good. But I watch the stuff they buy sometimes, and I'm like, oh my golly. But because the person doesn't buy investment property, they don't even know. They've never even wrote their own insurance policy. Not wrote, but signed their own insurance policy for investment property. They haven't ever read one, and they're trying to sell this thing. And to me, it just means you probably should own what you're kind of working in, or at least owned at some point.
Right. Have some experience there. Now, there's a segment that we've done in the past that I think feels appropriate here, and I wasn't even really planning on this, but it's called Origin Story. And you just touched on a little bit of your origin story in starting the Strategy Real Estate, which you own. And so the way that we do this for our audience is, any good superhero has an origin story. We talked before about Spider-Man's origin story and Superman, and gosh, who should we do today? Wolverine. Wolverine's origin story was that he could just he had these healing abilities. He just could heal. And then he got, there's some bad guys that experimented on him, and he ended up with these infused claws in his body. That's Wolverine's origin story. It's just a great one. It's one of the better ones. But I want to go back to this. I want to go back to you starting the brokerage, because you just said, I never really tried to make this thing a 15-person brokerage that it is today.
Yeah, which it was double at one point.
Right.
I decided to
tell us about that. Tell us about the start of that. When did you hang a sign? Did you say, okay, I'm going to start here and I'm just going to put a sign out front and I'm just going to try and do my thing? I mean, what was that like? How did it go?
Well, for me, it's just, I don't really, it just kind of all happened. And it's kind of like a lot of our stories. They just kind of fall in place. But I came in and I bought it. I told you I wanted to own a duplex. I owned that duplex already. I owned a 5-unit, and I saw this nice little house on 6th Street. And I thought, oh, my golly, I'll get that. And maybe I'll have a men's club. I'll call it a men's club. And that way I don't have to do work out of the house, and I'll just kind of go buy my real estate. Well, so I bought that building, and next thing I knew, banker said, hey, you'll probably hear the story again, but the banker said, hey, you need a loan. You need a job if you want another loan. I'm like, but hey, I'm making money. And he says, you need a job. So that's where I said, okay, well, I have this building down on 6th Street, which is downtown, and what if I turn that into an office, and upstairs will be the men's club? Well, later, basically just I put a sign out front, and people started showing up at the door, and I kind of was driving down the street with another guy, and he said, hey, we should really open up a brokerage. And I thought I'd open the brokerage with him, and that lasted about 3 to 6 months, and he was off his way, and God bless him. If it wasn't for him, I might have never opened the brokerage. And so I call those false crutches. Often what I'll be, everything you own in the end. And I thought, oh, we'll do this together, and he's going to do all this, and that's going to make it easier on me. If I didn't do that, I probably wouldn't be where I am today. So that got me into the building, and I got the sign out front. And then that relationship fell apart. I'm like, well, I just got to close enough deals. I can show the bank I make a little money so I can buy another duplex. Well, then the next thing I know, people are knocking on my door saying, hey, can I buy some real estate? I said, no, they sell normal retail.
You were turning them away. So
they
were showing up.
Yeah, they were showing up.
And you're going like, look, somebody down the road.
Windmirror's down the road. They work with residential. I just buy my own thing here. I got a couple of things. And then I started selling some investment properties to some people because that's what I was doing. I was like, if I'm looking at them, and they're like, what are you doing? The plumbers that I knew that were working on my things. And then I knew an electrician here. And they're like, what are you doing? And I'm like, well, I'm buying these things, and this is what we're doing. And they would start sending people to me, and then I would send. And so then I realized, and then I had another guy, and this guy kept knocking on my door and be like, come back, I got to go get an inspector. He came back again. And basically, one day I said, well, go get your license after telling him like 3 times. Go work.
Because he kept asking to be a broker for you.
Yes.
I remember this story.
Yes,
he kept asking, you go, and you kept saying, no,
go be a home
somewhere else.
inspector, and I'll put you on my team. And go be an appraiser. I'll put you on the team. I don't want to hire anybody. And so basically, I turned around, and he ends up knocking on my door enough times that I said, well, I got people knocking on the back door or the front door, and you're knocking on the back door. Maybe I put you guys together. Well, he went to get his license. While he was getting his license, another gal got referred to me by a lender, once again, a relationship, and said, hey, you got to go meet this Brett guy. Yeah, he'll probably do it. And somehow, within like 3 years, I was selling the majority of multifamily. We had the majority of sales of multifamily for several years, and I had 3 brokers in my office. And so I got this name. It was just sitting there. And then I said, I'll open up property management. And next thing you know, we went from 0 to 500 doors in 2 years in one town. And so that just started referrals and all these things. And then I'm like, oh, my gosh, shut it down by 2007. This is crazy. I just wanted to buy a duplex. Right. And so that's kind of really how it happened. But it was really relationships.
Wow.
So I'd go there. And then once again, going back to that story of me learning, help out the plumber. Right, so if a plumber needed help, I'd send a job to him. I mean, even here in the studio here, I told the studio guy, and in my head, he doesn't even know. I'm thinking, who can I get up here to help him? With more
right,
he's
with
got
more
plenty
business.
of business, but
right.
More business. And why? Because he's a good guy. He's here helping us out, and so he's being a good guy. I believe by him being a good guy, me being a good guy, that's how we rise together. It's not me profiting off him and him profiting. I mean, we got to make money. We got to keep these lights on. You got to pay for the mics. You got to do things, but if we all rise together, I really believe that it's going to be a much better place.
Right.
But that means we all have to put our work in. When we sign a contract, we agree, we got to do it, Yeah. Not like that tenant we started with.
That's not what we started. But I hear you talk about, I mean, what I hear there as well is relationship, how important relationship is. And it's actually, we're coming up on one of the last questions that we have here is, what has been one of the best resources for you in learning? Because I know that you've talked about things that you've listened to, people that have influenced you, but what has been one of the best resources for you over the years in just getting better, getting better?
Well, there's been a lot of resources, a lot of good schools. It depends on what you're going to. So if you're looking at stocks, there's different things and channels I can send you. In real estate, there's some good real estate schools, and I can send you to Rockwell Institute out of Kirkland, or out of Bellevue or out of California. But I think that's too simple an answer.
Well, one of the things that I've heard you say is, and that I just notice about you, is you're a learner. You're always listening to something. You're always reading something. You're always going, "Hey, Jason, have you seen this?" As I'm learning from you as well. I mean, do you have a general philosophy about, hey, look for podcasts, look for books, look for, how do you look at learning? Because you're a learner. I see it.
Yeah. For me, learning. I searched the scriptures for a lot of years. Before I got into any kind of business books, I really spent just a lot of time just searching God's word and having him try to speak to my heart and what I need to be. And you find a lot of principles and a lot of, if you really seek it and you sit down with some people and you study, you'll find that there's life in there. And so you start to seek these things, and then you start to live it. And for me,
that was a starting place.
That was the starting place. Yeah, it was. I mean, that's really. I mean, I could tell you Google. I could say, "Hey Google." If I look at my timing, I could say, "Hey Google was great." I mean, these guys, where I was born, it was just a timing. So life, a lot of times, timing. It's like the guys older than me did not know about Google.
Right.
So
you had access to all of this that was the internet,
exactly.
Right, coming up through.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then, but see, I had carbon copies. I almost brought one of those in to show the audience, because I thought they might not know what it is. And it's like, but also I knew how to do carbon copy. And so by me becoming a manager, I could break this link. I could be like, okay, you want to work in the carbon copy, you want to be in digital world, but I understand Google. And so these answers I can't get, and that used to take me, I'd have to hire 2 attorneys, and I didn't even know if the answers were right. At least I could bring down the information, so then if I wanted to call my attorney, I could ask the question I wanted to ask. And when I'm talking 20 years ago, so the information in there was so much less and so much more lagging and just dial up,
Right.
And so that, but it gave me this source of information. But in the end of the day, I would say, if you want to make it through it and you really want to be caring for people at the end of the day, Google's not going to do that for you. I mean, it's really going to be a heart issue. It's going to be saying, hey, I want to live my life for people around me. I mean, certainly my family. If I can't take care of my family, how can I help out anyone really around me? And if I can take care of my family, then I can take care of my neighbors, and then I can work my way out from there. And so, for me, it is the scriptures that's changed my life, and really what keeps me even here today. Because otherwise I would probably run off selfishly onto an island and then be alone and complaining about the island.
Right. You have said to me, I love that though, first of all, that you're starting with the principles, the foundation. But you've said that to me. You're like, Jason, if I didn't care about people, I'd be on an island somewhere just enjoying the rest of my life. So I love that. But so Brett, we're coming up on the time that we have for today. I did want to ask you if you had any last thoughts, anything that we missed today on common mistakes in real estate. Is there anything that you wanted to say before we wrap up?
No, I mean, we'll get back to my island story in a different show.
Yes, we will.
That's gonna be, I got a good story on the island and a lesson learned when you found paradise. Okay, not really. I think we got everything. I really think, just.
Yeah,
put your heart in it.
Yeah, just put your heart in it. Care about people and learning all the way along. Learning from mistakes, but also challenging yourself to be a learner, I think is what I heard you're saying.
Absolutely.
So one of the things we want to do is just thank our sponsors today. One of them is Creative Consortium. The Creative Consortium is where we're sitting, the space that we have here. We thank them. They're in Paulsbo, Washington. And the other thing is this. I just remind you that if you have any questions that you want to hear us discuss on the show or any comments, you can go to strategyinvestment.net, and you can just put your questions, comments on there. And hey, if you enjoyed today's show, go ahead and subscribe to the podcast, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and we will see you next time.